Hey there, BookTube. Noah. Everyone who reads a must converse is the channel. Thanks for coming back by again. Halfway through the month, and I'm halfway through Shogun by James Clavell. This is an epic work. It's so huge. I'm halfway through, right? So that's page 636. And, it's still gearing up. Like, it's still just building and building. It's very well written, very atmospheric. You really feel like you're there. It's historical fiction, and Clavell does a very good job. This is a reread for me. I read it so long ago that there's so many details that I don't remember. I'm really enjoying the reread. But there's a certain way that I thought that might be fun for us to explore this. First, I'll give you a little bit of it just for some people who haven't read it. Just a little bit. No big deal. It is a West meets East story. The Portuguese are actually allied with Spain in a conflict, an ongoing conflict war with Great Britain, and the Netherlands, respectively. And they have a presence in Japan. The Portuguese, the Jesuit priests, have a presence in Japan, and they're able to facilitate trade. They're very involved in commerce between the Chinese, Japanese, things like this, and spreading the religion, of course, right? Missionary style. We're following the first Englishman to make it around, Magellan's Pass, South America, and get to the Pacific, and then goes across, and the ship crash lands on Japan. The book is action packed. It is action. It's so fun and so cool. But James Clavell is very perceptive about the culture. I hear that he was an Australian, and he was very perceptive of the culture of Japan and why they think the way that they do, how they think, and the kind of conflicts that arise in the ideologies and the ways of thinking between Westerners, whether that be, in any European really, and the Eastern world, Japan more pointedly. So, in this book, there is, two cultures, the Japanese and the English, that are represented by, the English is represented by one person, Blackthorne. And the way that they both see the other culture as completely insane or stupid, while insisting that their culture is civilized and, handles themselves wisely. And it's so fun to see these kind of different things and watch it be explored when the different personages in the story have no idea what the real baseline for their ideological differences are. One of the main things is the sanctity of life, right? We have Christian, converted Christian Japanese in this, and they are converted to Catholicism, right? Blackthorne, being an Englishman, is a heretical Protestant, right? So, with Blackthorne arriving is the first kind of the first experience that Japanese people have of any kind of a different Christian, a different type of Christian than, a Catholic. And the Blackthorne and the priests that are there, the Portuguese Jesuit priests, being enemies of each other in an ideological war in another part of the world that they have no idea about, right? But what's very interesting about this is the ideological conflicts that are happening inside Blackthorne and the Japanese characters as well, but more so Blackthorne is our main character that we're following. Inside Blackthorne, as he's dealing with the Japanese, there is a lot of adventure, like I said, but what I'm going to touch on is a scene and I'm just going to read a little bit. So I'll tell you some context when we get there, and then I'm going to explore it, right? So they're having a conflict where one of the Japanese leaders is trying to get out of a city. There's a lot of political intrigue in this. Japan is many provinces. It's not unified under one leader, and all these different leaders that run different parts of Japan are antagonistic towards each other, with only tenuous alliances between some, this kind of thing. So our main Japanese leader that we're following is Toranaga, and he is trying to escape an area of Japan where he doesn't control. And if he stays there, there's already been an assassination attempt. There's already been a lot of, it's going to take getting out, So they're in the middle of that, and samurai, members of both sides, samurai and Ronin samurai as well, are fighting, right? They're fighting, and Toranaga is trying to escape under disguise. And when that happens, there's one samurai who is left on the shore. They get a ship. Toranaga and a group of samurai. Blackthorne is there. Mariko is there. Mariko is a female samurai that has converted to Christianity under the Portuguese priests. And she can speak Portuguese, she can speak Latin, and she can speak Japanese. So she's the interpreter. And they're all there. And Mariko's husband is still on the shore. And they push off this ship, a galley ship. So they push off. They're not far, but the Japanese cannot swim very well. Or they have a real fear of the sea. And so there's a reluctance to swim. And at any rate, Mariko's husband is still on the shore. And this is where we're at. Blackthorne is yelling to turn the ship around and go back. The gap was 30 yards now, and Blackthorne's mind was shouting, What's the matter with you? That's Buntaro, her husband, Mariko's husband, Buntaro. You can't just let him die. He's one of ours, he shouted at Yabu and at the ship. Him, Buntaro, he spun around to the captain. Back there, Isogi. But this time the seaman shook his head and helplessly held the escape course, and the oarmaster continued to beat on the great drum. That's for the galleymen to keep rowing. Blackthorne rushed Toranaga, who had his back to him studying the shore and the wharf, and at once 4 bodyguard samurai stepped in the pilot's way, swords on high, and he called out, Toranaga-sama, order the ship back, there, Dozo, please, go back. Aye, Anjun. That's what they call Blackthorne, Anjun. Toranaga pointed at once at the castle, signal flares, and once at the breakwater, and turned his back again with finality. Why, you S-less coward, Blackthorne began, but stopped. Then he rushed for the gunwale and leaned out over it. Swim, he hollered, making the motion. Swim, for Christ's sake. Buntaro understood. And he doesn't swim. This is a huge conflict that's happening right there. A page later, it just keeps building. A page later, he's still yelling, tell him to swim, by God. And Mariko says, he won't, Anjun-san. He's preparing to die. Blackthorne says, if he wants to die, for Christ's sake, why doesn't he go there? Blackthorne's finger stabbed towards the fight. Why doesn't he help his men? If he wants to die, why doesn't he die fighting like a man? Mariko did not take her eyes from the wharf, leaning against the young woman, because he might be captured, and if he swam, he might also be captured, and then his enemy would put him on show before the common people, shame him, do terrible things. A samurai cannot be captured and remain samurai. That's the worst dishonor, to be captured by an enemy. So my husband is doing what a man, a samurai, must do. A samurai dies with dignity. For what is life to a samurai? Nothing at all. All life is suffering, nay? It is his right and duty to die with honor before witnesses. What a stupid waste, Blackthorne says. So, he's going to commit seppuku. Seppuku is a ritual suicide that a samurai will commit. And it brings this huge question. And Blackthorne is wrestling with this. There's a lot of conversation back and forth between Mariko and Blackthorne and these kind of things. But I love this kind of exploration. So I was thinking about it, and I'm like, well, what is the real difference? You know, like when it comes down to it, there's a lot said about life and death. And Japan is an island country, of course, right? Just like England is an island country. But they are very different. England doesn't have earthquakes. Japan has earthquakes a lot, all the time. England is not hit by hurricanes, typhoons. Japan, typhoons are again, there is a season, a typhoon season. So they are well acquainted with death, and death is something that is just in their culture. They have more of a reverence for death, and they really do revere death in this kind of way. The way that Westerners revere life, the way that we might hold a sanctity, a sacred idea of living itself, and that even if you suffer, even if you're, put through the most horrible suffering, that you endure it to go on living, that is a positive thing to do. To the Japanese, that is a shameful thing to do. If you are getting put through hardship and suffering, well then you take your own life. Of course, there's a lot of, that's complex, right? Because in Japanese culture, somebody has a duty to perform. So if you are under like Toranaga being the leader of his men, he would have to grant permission to commit seppuku. But in a situation like Buntaro on the beach, he is well within his rights to end his life rather than get captured, rather than die a death under torture, or to be paraded around in front of people and put a quote unquote bad death. He's within his rights to kill himself. So Blackthorne looks at this like, well, what a waste of life. What a waste. You could go and help your men save, at least die fighting, right? This kind of thing. And it's not that he would rather, die fighting. It's that that suicide itself is a kind of cop out to the Western mind. So he's constantly being told to be patient, be patient. In this land, in Japan, death is something to be revered and respected and dealt with solemnly and with dignity all the time. And it's very interesting to go at it. But what they explore a lot of times in Shogun is time itself. Because knowing that death and living in a land where death is so prevalent, nature is death. The world is death. The life is death. And they have a reverence for life. They keep saying, Mariko will tell Blackthorne, we love life. We revere life. But it's more like they revere the present moment. They revere the time that they have, that they are living and able to experience something. There's so much reverence for a sunset. There's so much reverence for a kindness that's shown in the moments. And for an experience that hasn't been experienced before. These kind of things are what the Japanese live for and what they revere the most, being able to experience something new. So it is life, but it's more that they revere the present moment. America calls Japan the land of eternity many times in the book. And so I just thought it would be a cool way to explore the book. If that kind of thing interests you, you're going to love this book. It's a very action-packed. We'll see what's coming up in the second half. Thank you very much, BookTube, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye-bye.